Viewers, welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is our 13th season of the show, so the viewers that have been watching it on a regular basis, we thank you and we'd love to see more people watching the show. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer of over 25 years experience. With me tonight I've got John Corrance, a partner in the law firm.
Hi Tony, hi viewers. 13 seasons.
Tony, it's a lot of episodes.
Fantastic.
Thanks John, thanks viewers. Vivian Ryan, who's a lawyer come marketing guru. Good evening, Vivian.
Hi, Tony. Hi, viewers. Hi, John.
And viewers, tonight we're going to have a sensational story of a Lyall Watts, who's an asbestos sufferer. He's going to tell us of his experiences and what he's going through. So please stay tuned for the second segment.
However, before that, Tony, what's in the news?
Viewers, there's been a lot of stories in the news, but the one that's really got my eye this week is this sexual assault rife in psychiatric hospitals. Viv, what's that all about?
Well, new reports come out that indicates that over 45% of patrons who are in these psychiatric units have suffered some form of sexual assault, which is absolutely alarming. It's really distressing because a lot of these people who are in these units have actually been victims of sexual assault prior to their attendance there and obviously being treated for the ramifications of such actions. So, yeah, it's really alarming, Tony.
And John, is it opportunistic? Is that why it's happening?
It's a shocking story, Tony. We've got people that are in government-run institutions. The government is liable for their care. They've got a duty to take care of these people. However, what's been happening, it looks like that fellow patients or someone else, carers, for example, are doing these things to them. It's a shocking story. It's rife.
I think what's really, really awful is that some of these patrons are, they've got obviously psychiatric injuries. And how do they go about proving these allegations?
Well, for them to do a report showing that 1 in 2, there must be a lot of people complaining, a lot of other patrons in the hospital. So I would have thought that the test is on a balance of probabilities.
Yes.
So if you get enough people complaining about something, you'd think that would suffice, wouldn't it, John?
Look, you'd think so, Tony. However, we all know their credit as a witness of truth, especially when someone's got psychological issues, that's going to be tested. At the same time, what comes out of this report is there has to be more security, doesn't there, Tony?
I think so. And maybe better checks of people that work with these
exactly
psychiatrically affected
But
people.
it's another shocking example of, the state of our systems.
Systems letting people down. And the sad thing is they're in there for psychiatric injuries to start with, so you can imagine how devastated they would be.
It is. It just
once they've
exacerbates
experienced.
the situation.
They need help. They're helpless people, and they've been taken advantage of.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to prove. I mean, any sexual assault case is difficult to prove, but particularly in these circumstances. So,
I was surprised the other day to find that motorcyclists don't have registration numbers at the front of their bikes.
I was shocked, actually, Tony.
well, actually, do you know why they don't have? No Western country actually has an ability to have your driver's license on the front of any of the motorcycles because it actually voids a warranty. Apparently, the airflow to the engine is compromised by fitting an extra component to the front of the bicycle.
Really?
This comes to me through some very expert advice.
At the same time, we're talking about safety on the roads, speeding. These people, especially motorcyclists, that if they're caught speeding, well, they have to be caught. And the problem is, without a number plate at the front of the bike, it's more likely than not they're going to get away with it, Tony.
And they are getting away with it because sadly, our speed cameras don't detect from behind.
Well, that's right. That was going to be my next question. In Western Australia, they actually have cameras fitted to the front and the rear of the speeding vehicles, and they're actually catching not only the the motorcyclists, but also the cars as well. Because consider, there are a number of cars that get away with, speeding too, because of the way that the cameras are affixed to vehicles, so they're not catching them.
But it's very rare,
from behind.
Viv, compared to. And also, what about cyclists? The other day I'm getting out of my car and the cyclist whizzed past my ear. I'd turn around and it nearly knocked me over. If you had hit me, I wouldn't have any rights, would I, John?
Well, no,
chase
it's problematic. It is problematic. But with the motorcyclists, Tony, we've got Judge Gordon Lewis, the traffic commissioner, has made the recommendation that the number plates be put on the front of these motorcycles. Now, we all know Judge Gordon Lewis.
Very eminent judge.
Great, eminent judge, head of, lectured in ethics at Melbourne University.
President of the Law Institute.
President of the Law Institute, and also head of the County Court work cover list for years.
Yes.
And we've got an eminent jurist such as the judge recommending this. Well, something's got to change.
Well, it comes back to manufacturers. As I said, it does compromise the integrity of the warranty and actually the vehicle itself. So, then it becomes whether or not manufacturers can actually make that happen.
Viv, our next story would be close to your heart. You're a mother with 2 children. Kid work ban overturned. Tell us a bit about this.
Well, this is a really interesting case. A male has a very strong history of violence that the judge has recently awarded their ability to work with children on the basis that these incidents occurred between 8 and 19 years ago. I just find this test really interesting because the judge actually alluded to it being a reasonable man test, but what does reasonable man actually mean, given the fact that this male has been in prison for violence? He actually threw someone off a bridge. He even took a hand to his nephew, who was a minor. So I just find this judgment quite interesting.
And he meets the reasonable man test,
Correct,
does he?
yes.
You'd want to know that he's had the appropriate rehabilitation, wouldn't you, John?
Well, can anyone be rehabilitated from that, Tony?
I guess
I'm not prepared to write anyone off,
No.
but at the end of the day, you do need proper counselling and rehab, I would have thought.
Well,
Well, you do, but at the same time, we're talking about the safety of children.
Yeah,
And
it's a
if-
big issue.
yeah.
And that's more important.
We might have to do this as a separate episode in the future. This is
Absolutely.
something, maybe we can get something on Facebook or Twitter. We'll see what the viewers think about this. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, what about company fined $160,000 after a man was caught in a conveyor belt, John?
Oh, this goes to my heart, Tony. It's we've got a employer, in this case, Skill Group Limited, a recruitment agency that have basically given out to this company.
He's a labourer that works on a conveyance,
Exactly.
conveyancing belt.
Inside Tech Pivot, he's working and he suffers this severe injury where he's actually dragged into the conveyor belt.
Yeah, suffered really, really serious
Shocking
injuries to
shoulder
his
injuries. 9 months later, he still hasn't recovered. Both have been fined a total of $160,000. $70,000 for the
Company?
the recruiter,
Okay.
recruitment agency, and $90,000 for the company. It just goes to show, Tony, the employers and the recruiters, you're liable for your actions.
And you need to provide a safe working environment and not
Exactly.
rely on a buddy system that doesn't work, as what happened in this case.
Exactly.
We're going to have to go to a sponsors break. Viv, thanks for coming on board.
It's always a
as
pleasure,
usual.
Tony. Thanks, Josh.
And viewers, just after the break, please stay tuned. We've got a riveting episode with Josh Fergeus and Lyall Watts. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Before the break, we promised you that we'd have an episode on asbestos. We've got a very interesting guest tonight who's Lyall Watts. He's a survivor of asbestos. He's currently receiving treatment, palliative care, but I'll go to the guests. And Josh Fergeus, CEO of Asbestoswise. You've been on the show before. Josh, welcome back.
Hi Tony, thanks for having me back.
And Lyall Watts, currently receiving palliative care for mesothelioma and asbestos-related condition. Good evening, Lyall.
Tony, viewers.
Now, Josh, you're on the show recently and you told us about the effects of asbestos and how it's going to touch so many people in the future. What are the numbers, do you know?
So there are tens of thousands of people across Australia that are currently living with an asbestos-related disease. Lots more obviously that have been affected by that, family members and so on. At the moment we're seeing about 700 deaths a year of people dying from an asbestos-related condition, and those numbers are expected to grow. We don't know where that's going to end, so we'll have to see, but it's definitely a real problem.
And the future, Josh, is not looking good, is it?
Well, there's only been really small advances, John. I mean, we're seeing a situation at the moment where there's a bit of action in the federal sphere trying to get some control over how asbestos is currently used and removed and managed, which may have some impact, but there hasn't been a lot of movement.
Well,
no.
it's calculated that between 30 to 40,000 people will be suffering this disease over the next 20 to 30 years. It's a shocking statistic,
it's a very,
isn't it, Tony?
very, very sad statistic. Tonight we're here to talk about Lyall. Lyall, tell us a bit about your background. Where did you work, say, in the last 30 years?
Tony, I've been a public servant up until November last year with the state government in the Department of Sustainability and Environment, working in fire management.
It's pretty ironic because the asbestos materials were generally used as a fire preventer, isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's not the reason I was working there, I must admit, but yes, true.
Now, where were you exposed to the asbestos?
That I'm not sure of. Certainly DSE has a depot at Altona, which was partially built of asbestos, and I've spent many hours there over the years. With mesothelioma, they say it only takes one fibre. It could well have been there. As far as the home situation, I don't think I've ever lived in a place which has had exposed or friable asbestos. When I was much younger, my father worked in the building industry, and I used to go to sites with him. This is 50 years ago. It could have been there.
Josh, what's the relevance of the home situation, the background exposure?
Oh, look, it's really relevant, Tony. I mean, it's always so difficult for someone to pinpoint where they may have been exposed to asbestos, and as Lyall said, it only takes one fibre. So, you may have been working in a workplace that's may have had some exposure to asbestos over a number of years, but the actual cause, that may not be the actual cause. It might be earlier, it might be at home, it might be some casual exposure. Who knows? It's really relevant to try and get all of that information.
John, assuming you can't pinpoint where the exposure was, you've still got a potential claim, haven't you?
Oh, exactly, Tony. The recent case law is clear in that regard. A cause, a potential exposure, even for a short period of time, as in we're talking just hours, 20 or 30 years ago, if that can be generally proved on the balance of probabilities, well, you do have a claim.
Okay. And there's also a fund being set up, Josh, to cover people in those circumstances, the James Hardy Fund?
Yeah, look, it's some of these processes have been quite streamlined over the years because you have had so many people claiming from certain specific sites and specific areas where they've been exposed. So if you had been exposed and developed an asbestos-related disease, it may have been a process that's become easier because of those that sort of went before and paved the way. Okay. So it's worth exploring.
Lyall, coming back to you, you did mount proceedings, albeit the case settled out of court. Now, you weren't happy with the result, but I don't want to go into specifics of it because you are subject to confidentiality. And what did they say the problem with your case was?
That I couldn't actually prove deliberately who or where I'd been exposed.
And wasn't one of the problems that you raised the issue of the exposure to Altona, and they said that it wasn't a sufficient period for you to develop the condition. Is that correct?
Certainly one of the medical experts I saw for the defendants came out and said, nonsense. The latency, I suppose the word is far longer than 20 years.
Are you surprised by that, Josh? That a doctor would say 20 years is inadequate for you to develop the condition?
Look, there's a lot of conjecture about these sorts of things, and I know that a lot of different medical professionals have quite different views. Although asbestos and the use of asbestos has been around for a very, very long time, you seem to have a huge variety of opinions within the medical community and within the legal community as well around these sorts of issues. I think that's one of the things that makes it really difficult for people who are living with an asbestos-related disease, is the information they receive can be so radically different from source to source. So it's an interesting one.
Tony, I've asked an oncologist that I see occasionally, a locum, that question. He said, how do I explain the 15-year-old boy that I'm treating?
It's a pity that particular child wasn't available at the time your case was going to court. Isn't that right, Lyall?
Yes, true.
John, that decision in Western Australia of King, his exposure was for how long?
6 hours in total, Tony.
Over what period of time?
Over quite a few years, and that was in the early 70s.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, that wouldn't help Lyall, but he had a 6-hour exposure and he got a pretty big payout, didn't he?
Oh, yes. We're talking over $1 million, Tony. And look, it just goes to show that the case law has progressed and developed and changed recently. And in the end, all you have to show is that there was a probability and a causal relation, Tony.
Okay. Viewers, we've got to go to a break, so please stay tuned. After the break, we'll take up the discussion with Josh and Lyall Watts. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Before the break, we were talking about the experiences of Lyall Watts. Now, Lyall, when were you diagnosed with this condition?
Tony, I was actually diagnosed in 2008. I was misdiagnosed in 2005, and I first noticed what's known as ascites, what I now know to be ascites, in 2004. Ascites is a swelling in the belly, build up of fluid, which I now know has been caused by the peritoneal mesothelioma, which is different to the more common pleural mesothelioma.
Okay. Now, you said before that you can't really treat these conditions, so you're getting palliative care. What's that comprise of, Lyall?
I'm about to finish a cycle of 6 rounds of or 6 cycles of chemotherapy. It's the third lot I've had, and well, next Monday night I'll be in hospital having 2 hours of poison and 16 hours of flushing it out.
Well, you've got our best wishes there.
Thank you.
Josh, the support groups at Asbestoswise, what do they do?
Well, it's really just a chance for people who are living with an asbestos-related disease to meet, speak to each other about their conditions, hopefully gain some information and develop a bit of a support network of people who know what they're going through. We also have a group for people who've been bereaved, so family members who have lost someone who had an asbestos-related disease. One of the difficulties we find with the support groups though, Tony, is that everyone tends to respond to being diagnosed or living with an asbestos-related disease in quite a different fashion. some people want to sort of almost ignore it and just go on with it and do what their doctors say, and that's that. And others really want to get really well educated and informed about their condition, what they can do about their condition, the latest sort of news and developments in treatment, or any sort of support options available, research that's going on. So it's a really interesting sort of group of people.
John, you've got an interest in this area of practice, haven't you?
Tony, yes, as you know, we do litigation, asbestos-related litigation for people such as Lyall that have contracted these diseases, and, well, we seek compensation for pain and suffering damages and for future medical expenses, Tony.
And economic loss as well.
And economic loss if that's possible. Okay. Tony, we've had great success with our claims. We usually find there's speedy claims. These claims can be settled within 2-3 months of issuing court proceedings. The Supreme Court have
speedy trial list.
A speedy trial list, literally, because unfortunately, time is of the essence, isn't it, Tony?
Of course.
Tony, in this regard, we can see a lot more of Josh on a previous episode on the internet, viewers. Also, we want to hear your feedback, viewers, on Facebook and on Twitter. We want to hear your stories and your views on this insidious and shocking disease that's affecting thousands of people in Australia. And will affect thousands of people more.
And not only workers, you've got a lot of housewives and children that have been affected. That's correct, isn't it?
Well, you get all sorts of situations, Tony. People have been exposed in all sorts of different conditions. We have some of the members of Asbestoswise are people, as you say, they'll be wives or parents who've been exposed through being involved with the gear of even things like that. There's all sorts of people, and it only takes a reasonably small exposure sometimes for people to develop an asbestos-related disease. Obviously, it's less common than when you've been exposed over a longer period of time, for example, through a workplace or what have you, but it does happen.
Okay. Lyall, on a day-to-day basis, what do you do? What do you do with yourself?
I'm trying to get my affairs in order, actually.
Are you?
Tony, which I haven't done for many, many years, so going through boxes of papers, and hopefully I'll finish that soon.
And how about your involvement in support groups?
As you know, I'm a member of Asbestoswise. I take an interest in the politics, but I suppose that's the sort of politics of getting legislation through. There's legislation before the Federal Parliament at the moment. And I'm also passionately interested in research, because research is the only thing that will save me. Now, that's not to say that I expect anything out of that. I think I'll die before anything does happen on the research side of things, but I really want state and federal governments to spend far more than they are now on research into a cure for asbestos-related diseases, particularly mesothelioma.
Josh, just on that point that Lyall raised, what sort of money has been devoted towards researching this insidious disease?
Look, really not a lot, Tony. Particularly in Victoria, we don't have a lot of money being spent on these sorts of things. Recently, we've had a government commitment to put $200,000 towards research that's supporting some research that's being undertaken by the Cancer Council as well. Occasionally you'll get a private philanthropic contribution here and there for people that want to see further research done, but there's no consistent approach, there's no consistent plan, and we're certainly seeing nothing like the tens of millions of dollars that are being spent on other forms of cancer that we've recently seen.
Prostate and breast.
Exactly. And obviously we need to be tackling those. Obviously we need to be investing in research in those areas. But research into mesothelioma and other asbestos-related conditions is relatively non-existent.
John, $200,000.
Shocking.
How far is that going to get you?
that's not that won't even cover the costs of a lab technician, Tony. What I'm concerned about is, well, why isn't these negligent employers paying for the cost of research?
Yeah, that's not. I actually think that's not a bad point, Josh. Why aren't these companies that have exposed people like Lyall to this condition contributing, say, $10,000 for every case?
Mm-hmm. And look, that's something that we'd very much like to see happen. I mean, we're seeing cases of compensation being awarded, which is excellent, and that's really what needs to come first.
But that's after the fact, isn't it?
Exactly,
It's too late.
Exactly. I think the next step now, John, you're quite right, is to see some investment, giving something back in that way to making sure that this doesn't happen into the future, and also to be assisting people to try and find a treatment for some of these asbestos-related conditions.
Lyall, is there anything else you want to add? Sadly, the time flies and the show moves pretty quick.
No, I'd thank you for having me on, though.
I really appreciate you having
very
me on.
much.
I'd like to get you on again if I can in the future. Josh, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, Tony, it'd be great if people need some information, some advice. If they'd like to help people with an asbestos-related disease, they can check out our website, asbestoswise.com.au. If they want to make a donation, they can donate towards research, the running of our support groups, generally the running of our organisation. Or if they need any information and so on, they can get on there, contact us via the web or give us a call, and we'd be very happy to help.
And John, anything you want to add?
Look, thank you, Tony, and thank you, viewers. But again, viewers, anyone suffering this insidious asbestos disease, you have a right to claim compensation, and you should contact a lawyer and claim compensation.
And viewers, the only thing I want to add is go to our website. Also, go to Twitter and Facebook. This is something we do want to get some feedback on. And thanks for watching the show. And I do hope that Lyall keeps kicking on for the future, quite a deal into the future, and hope that research does help you, Lyall.
Thanks very much, Tony.
And viewers, thanks for watching the show, and stay tuned for future episodes, and always stay safe.